All right, we'll go ahead and get started. It's 11:01. So thank you everyone for joining, and we really appreciate your time. My name is Courtney Gagliardi. I'm a channel account manager here at Aruba, covering the East Coast. And today we're bringing Matthew Scala in, who's one of our systems engineer, to discuss our access security solution, and kind of go over some of the ins and outs. So we're going to share a couple quick slides, and then he'll do a quick demo. And then we also have Brian Janilla with us, and he's going to walk us through making sure you're signed up through the Silver Peak Partner Portal, and that's how you will access the eval license we're able to provide you for attending the webinar today. So Matthew has a lot of great content. So with that, I will kick it over to you, Matthew.
Yeah, hey, thanks, Courtney, and welcome everyone. As Courtney mentioned, Matthew Scala. I'm a systems engineer working in the channel with a lot of our partners and customers, really everything across the Aruba portfolio. Of course, today we're going to kind of focus on SSE, or Secure Service Edge, and what that means really to your company, to the industry. Just a little history. Some of you may know several years ago, probably about just over 3 now, we acquired Silver Peak, which really positioned Aruba well in the SD-WAN space, right? So path conditioning, WAN optimization, and things like that. And now with the acquisition of Access Security, which is going on just about a year now, it really gives us a full complement and a full story to talk to SASE as a whole, and of course SSE as a subset of that. So we'll try to keep this interactive. As Courtney mentioned, we do have some slides here. If you have any questions, please bring it up in the Q&A. We're not going to be death by slides or anything like that. We'll even get a bit of a demo just to show you what the interface looks like. I think Courtney had also mentioned that if you do have access to the Silver Peak Partner Portal, you can register there and even request some NFR licenses, whether that's for Edge Connect, access software, get some entitlements, and do some of the stuff on your own. So many of you, of course, are used to what we call the then, and even maybe today with a lot of the legacy architectures running around where everything is kind of centered around the data center. Right, we have folks that are connecting from branches, corporate offices, homes, but they connect to the data center really for access to just about any type of connectivity or application. There are some considerations here, of course, right? COVID especially brought in the work from home. We have folks who are on the road, and so really when you think about the security perimeter, right, where that lives today, that's kind of dissolved, right? We demand access to anything from just about anywhere. So how do we do that, right? How do we get to that world where we can connect users, applications, contractors, third-party VPNs in a secure way? And we're going to talk about some of those things, right? Of course, in the old model, all of us are very familiar with things like MPLS connections, point-to-point. There's a lot of cost there. There's a lot of complexity. But with the new cloud-delivered security model, right, these traditional security functions are now moving to the cloud. So we'll talk about some of the buzzwords, right? ZTNA, CASB, SWIG, DEM, and what this means, right? It's more than just a marketing play, if you will. This slide kind of encompasses the whole security and cloud offering portfolio for HPE Aruba Networking. Many of you, again, are familiar with Edge Connect, which again is primarily secure WAN Edge, right? The ability to use internet links, LTE, and provide a very high quality experience for the user. Of course, we have ClearPass, which has been around, I think, over 10 years now. That's kind of an on-prem solution. We do have some flavors available in the cloud. And that's your basic network access control, right? A lot of use cases, configurability there. But again, today we'll kind of focus on the Security Service Edge, or SSE, which encompasses, again, a lot of these different technologies that we're talking about. So when we actually look a little deeper and we want to break down some of the various technologies, of course, on the right-hand side is where we'll be focusing on. But just as a quick synopsis, right? SASE is a term, a framework, if you will, that Gartner coined back in 2019, right? And really, it was about combining cloud connectivity and services and pairing that with security. For any folks who consume the Edge Connect product today, right, there's a focus on software-defined WAN, data path and dynamic path selection, WAN optimization, right, especially for those data center to data center connections where you may be moving tons of traffic and want to optimize that bandwidth and optimize that experience. And then SSE is really the component of that, right? So when we talk about SASE, right, that is SD-WAN plus SSE. If you're not consuming SD-WAN today, or maybe you have a different solution or you're just not ready for it, but you do want to provide things like a VPN replacement, right, a very secure web experience, this is where SSE comes into play. When we look at the different pieces, right, of course, again, we spoke about SD-WAN. These can be appliances that you deploy on premise as a hardware. You can deploy these as virtual machines, of course. And we even have some of this feature and functionality built into some of our access points that we sell today, right? So the ability to do some of this intelligent path conditioning on an access point, right, where you've got a built-in firewall, you've got built-in visibility, is huge, right? And HPE Aruba Networking is a leader in that space. And then, of course, you know, when we look at SSE, right, there's really four main components that customers are asking about, right? ZTNA, or Zero Trust Network Access. This is where we see a lot of customers first adopt SSE, right? This is your phase one, if you will, where folks may have a traditional VPN appliance, right? We're giving users access to a network, we're giving them an IP address. But of course, many of us know that there are some security risks, right? There's a lot of exposure. The attack surface is very wide when you put someone on the network, right? This could be your trusted corporate user. This could be a third-party contractor. And so what are some of the ways that we can go about moving beyond the traditional VPN model and granting access to just individual applications, right? That's what ZTNA is, and we'll get into some of that. SWIG, right? That's kind of like your forward proxy, right? You have the ability to do URL filtering, geolocation, content filtering, sandboxing, right? Anti-malware, where we pin up tunnels to the Access Atmos cloud and do that for you, right? So you can get rid of those very expensive firewalls, having to manage that policy, keep it up to date, right? And that's kind of where internet access in a secure way is delivered. CASB, right? That's your cloud access security broker. So many folks, of course, have presence in the cloud. This could be Azure, AWS, GCP, Oracle, a bunch of them out there today. But how do we go about protecting and securing some of the data, right? If I provide folks access, you know, to Office 365, or you think about Salesforce, right? I've got tons of customer information there. Well, I want to make sure that only the people who are supposed to have access to that information and can upload and download that information have the authority to do so. And how can we enforce that? And then DEM, right? That's basically our digital experience monitoring, right? Where we're implementing all of these technologies, but we need a way for administrators to have visibility into these flows, right? Not just to see access, who's doing what, but this could be troubleshooting, this could be for reporting purposes. And so really to wrap all this up in a nice, pretty bow through a single pane of glass, through a single experience, is what we look to provide through DEM. So, you know, in this case, when we dive deeper into some of these SSE solutions, right, you'll find that each solution kind of emphasizes a specific technology area. This could be software secure web gateway, where a company started there. This could be CASB. Atmos though, Access kind of took a different approach, right? Of course, we've all heard of Zscaler, we've heard of iBoss, we've heard of other players in the market, but one of the things that was attractive to HPE Aruba Networking when we acquired Access is that they really believe that the future was all about transitioning to a security strategy based on zero trust. Right? We talk about zero trust as a concept, right? And what that means to folks. We only want to provide the resources required to perform a function, right? So again, instead of placing a user on the network where they have access to quite an array of things, right? This could be due to misconfiguration. Perhaps I don't have the time to configure policies, right? But in this case, we're just providing them access to a specific function or application. So this platform was really built to deliver zero trust network access, right? That strategy is really at the center of everything that we do. Again, the future that we see is about delivering secure access for applications, right? Again, this could be in the cloud, this could be in your private data center, right? Of course, we integrate security checks such as MFA or multi-factor authentication. We pair that with device posture, right? Maybe I have the rights to log in, but if I have a Windows machine, for example, that's infected with malware, well, we have the ability to, evaluate that posture and assess whether we're going to allow them onto the network or not. So that's a big piece. When we talk about the phase one, right, the VPN architectures, right, the traditional VPN concentrator or appliance, and all the other appliances that are sitting in the back, right? We've all seen this. Typically, you've got your edge firewall, right? You have a set of rules. Maybe this is just for VPN connectivity. Maybe this is for web access, right? But once you have that firewall, behind that is really what we see, a slew of devices. Right? Again, you have your VPN concentrator. Of course, this is for your client VPN, right? Things like that. Maybe some of your IPsec site-to-site tunnels. Maybe you have a DDoS, right? Defense, where maybe there's a botnet that's targeting your website or your data center. You may have a NAC, right? It could be ClearPass, could be something else. And then, of course, SSL, right? SSL obviously involves encryption and the ability to look at that data and understand what that is. Of course, that's typically another appliance. Intrusion prevention, right? And detection, right? We have folks that work in that space, right? And just sell those appliances. The other piece of this, right, in addition to having so many appliances in that sprawl, is that, again, the concept of providing a user an IP address on the network, right? And this is when we talk about lateral movement, right? Especially where either a device may be infected or you have a bad actor, right, that stole someone's credentials, right? But VPNs, they expose IPs, right? When you have a VPN device on the internet, right, it has a public IP available typically, and folks can find that if they want to, right? Typical scans and pings. So you're inviting really a lot of folks to say, hey, here's my doorbell, you can ring it. And folks have a lot of different ways, right, to attack a VPN. As mentioned, right, when we place that user onto the network, and give them an IP address, even though the intention may be to just provide them access to a finance database, right? Perhaps the administrator didn't set this up correctly. And so in addition to me being able to access the finance database, maybe I have access to the admin tools, right? Maybe my ServiceNow or some other VLANs or subnets that I'm not supposed to, okay? And so there's a lot of lateral movement there. And then again, this kind of ties into overprivileged access, right? When there's a breach, of course, when there's malware on a device, we can move laterally. We can start to access other systems, right? Think about domain controllers, password lockers, IT tools, right? For accessing switches, routers, and stuff like that. And it could become, very damaging very quickly. The other thing is the experience, right? So, given all those things that we spoke about, right? Appliance sprawl, overextending access, exposing the VPN, right? With a doorbell on the internet, if you will. VPNs can also deliver a suboptimal experience to the user, right? We're not so much talking about a bandwidth as much as we're talking about latency, okay? Especially for customers, right, or users that are all over the place. It could be multi-state, it could be multi-country. Maybe I'm based in Florida, but I'm trying to access a data center that's in Germany. What is that actual experience like? So, a lot of this is hairpinning. A lot of this is backhauling that we've seen, right? Sometimes we connect. Sometimes we get kicked off the network and have to reconnect, right? So, again, in addition to everything that we spoke about, right? Those exposures, those multiple appliances that I have to buy, keep up to date, right? The overall experience for the user, even though they don't see that, is very suboptimal in many cases, okay? So again, here's a summary, right? For the IT administrator, these VPNs are complex to manage, right? If you think about, just setting up, right? My boss that wants to get on the VPN, I have to allow them, I have to know where they're coming from, I have to set up rule sets and policies. And of course, as his access requests and requirements change over time, of course, I have to scale that. If I've got tens or hundreds or even thousands of users who all have different requirements for access, how am I going to scale that with a team of just a few IT admins, right? Maybe I'm a very large corporation. I've got a solid rock star team of 50 admins, security guys, and network guys, but this just does not scale, okay? There's no way to be able to provide rule set updates. There's no way to do firmware upgrades and everything in between, right? In addition to the fact that each one of these skill sets requires different training, right? Different administrative overhead, right? We're talking about different products from different vendors that all have their licensing consumption models, right? It becomes very complex to manage. And so when we talk about access, right, one of the keys here is that instead of providing a user access to the network on a VPN appliance, access basically acts as a broker, okay? And we'll get into some of these steps, right? But what that enables us to do is secure organizations where users are no longer connecting to your direct data center, right? We're no longer putting them on your campus, right? We're connecting them to the Access Atmos cloud and brokering a connection back to your application, right? Again, this could be on your on-premise data center. This could be your application that's hosted in the cloud. This could be a SaaS application, right? And so instead of, again, providing access to a free-for-all, if you will, and given an IP, we are just providing access to individual resources, a specific application, right? If I need access to Salesforce, right, I'm going to connect, and the only thing I'm going to be able to do is access Salesforce. And within Salesforce, I'm going to have further rights. Can I download? Can I modify information? Full visibility, full control into how this works, okay? Again, it takes the concept of zero trust, right? So least privilege access, I'm not going to trust anyone, and I'm only going to provide certain access where needed, right? So instead of that IP permit any, it flips that, okay? The next piece, as I mentioned, right, some of the steps here. So if I'm a user, right, you can consume SSE as an agentless solution. You can consume it as an agent-based solution. It really depends on how you want to secure applications and which technologies you are consuming. So in the case, right, I could be running an agent on my desktop. I could just bring up a web browser, right, and go to my URL and access there and log in. But as soon as my user requests that access, right, This gets auto-routed to the closest access POP, right? We call this smart routing. And this kind of goes back to the latency conversation that we had earlier, right? I don't want to have secure access to my applications, but also a poor experience, right? Where I'm traversing multiple states or multiple countries just to get to what I need, right? So we auto-route that, right? We look at things like DNS, we look at things like packet loss, latency, jitter, all those things that we want to know about, and we auto route that to the closest POP, right? Once that gets routed intelligently, we're evaluating the identity, right? User identity policy, right? Is there any sort of two-factor or multi-factor authentication? And we're coupling that user identity, right? I could be Matthew Scala at HPE connecting to a resource, but if I connect from my corporate laptop versus my personal iPhone, I'm going to be given two different sets of access, right? So it's not one or the other, right? It's a complete policy and identity that we review. Device posture, right? Am I running antivirus? Do I have the latest Windows or Mac OS updates? Things like that. The fourth step that we have, of course, is to broker that connection, right? But the connection is being made not to your actual applications in the data center or in the cloud, but to Atmos, right? We are brokering that connection. We are the middleman, if you will, between any resource that you want to provide and your user that sits anywhere, okay? That's a very important concept to understand. Of course, once we onboard that user onto the network, hey, I can get to Salesforce. Hey, I can get to the finance application. Whatever that may be, we continuously monitor, right, that connection, that user, that traffic flow, right? Things change. I get connected to the network, everything's fine. I get an email, I click on a phishing link, right, or I download an executable, and all of a sudden I'm compromised. And we have the ability to monitor that in real time and quarantine users, right, as things change, because the network is dynamic. When we look at things like secure web gateway, right, we were talking a heavy emphasis on ZTNA, right, that zero trust network access, that VPN replacement. Typically what we see is phase one. Some folks build phase two, or maybe they start phase one with SWG or secure web gateway, okay? All right, I'm not ready to decommission my VPN device, right? Maybe I just bought another 3-year subscription. I want to run it out, but I do have an interest in providing a secure, clean web experience for my users, right? Again, right, this could be basic web categorization. Hey, no one's going to go to any porn sites. No one's going to go to any social media sites, right? So we have the ability to match and enforce policies on a number of categories, right? We can inspect SSL traffic. This is a big differentiator for us, right? Many competitors that claim to offer some of this secure web gateway can only do so with unencrypted traffic, right? That was maybe the case 10 years ago when everything was HTTP, but we'd see most traffic is now HTTPS, right? Which encrypts traffic, which is a great thing, but we need the ability to understand what that traffic flow looks like, so we can turn that on or off as needed. Reputation, right? Reputation is huge. We partner with a company called Bright Cloud, who essentially takes the entire internet, if you will, and assigns reputation scores, right? Based on things that they see, right? Is it safe? Is this a phishing site? Do things change over time? And we are constantly fed that information on a real-time basis. We can do file classification. We can do sandboxing, right? So there's a number of things that we can turn on and off, right? It's not an all or nothing thing. The ability to customize this policy for your organization, for your company's needs, is one of the advantages to using the Access solution. This particular slide I like. Some of us see this as a chain or what actually happens, right, in the event of an attack on your organization, right? A bad actor, right, may send an email. Could send it as the CEO. Oftentimes it looks legitimate, right? We see these from Bank of America all the time, things like that. And someone may, click on a particular link or download an executable, right? And now I've installed malware, right? So we've compromised a host, right? In this case, right, we're eliminating the attack surface with SSE, okay? Things are protected, right, by the ability for Atmos and Access to function as that broker, if you will, okay? We have that content inspection as well, right? So we can look at file types, we can look at various websites and URLs, right, and prevent users from ever even clicking on that. As we move down the chain, right, hey, I've compromised a host, right? Well, now I can perhaps get into a domain controller and start to steal credentials, right? Maybe I'm just a basic user, but now if I can steal credentials of an IT admin, right, or a power user, well, now that's going to give me the ability to move laterally, right? And as we mentioned, right, when we place a user on the network with an IP address, right, they've got a VLAN, they've got a subnet, they have the ability to explore, they have the ability to perform damage, right? So again, when we talk about zero trust, least privileged access, right, we don't have to maintain and keep up ACLs, right? This is all policy driven. And then the worst part, right, right before you wind up on CNN or Fox News, is that now that I have the ability to move about a company's network, I'm stealing data, right? This could be customer data, this could be serial numbers, this could be intellectual property, right? That costs folks millions and millions of dollars in damage, right? And then they can install ransomware, right? We've seen this in, unfortunately, right, hospitals where people's lives are on the line. Okay, if you don't pay this ransomware, we're not going to put the medical devices back online. This is, this goes beyond just financial spreadsheets, right? Sometimes people's lives are on the line, and so we see that. Okay, and we want to prevent that data loss. Again, this could be financials, this could be patient data, this could be intellectual property, right? We've read about this, we've seen this. Okay, so the ability to have controls for data loss prevention is huge. And that kind of speaks to our CASB solutions and stuff like that. We're just about at the end of the slides. Again, I promised a quick little overview. This is a quick snapshot of the dashboard. We'll do a very quick demo of what the dashboard looks like. I'll log in as a user just to show you what that looks like in real time, right? But again, the whole point here is that when I implement these technologies, right, ZTNA, that VPN replacement, secure web gateway, right, content, URL filtering, CASB, protecting my applications and resources that are in the cloud, right, and using a single pane of glass to access all this, right, no pun intended, it is huge. We're not going to get into too much competitor stuff, but for the folks who have heard of Zscaler and some other competitors, I want to make a very good point here. Okay, so picking on Zscaler, for example, they have multiple products available that do similar things, right? Private access, internet access, CASB. But there's a few things that folks need to be aware of. From an overall administrative experience, and Zscaler is not the only one, but when you consume a product from Zscaler and a lot of other of our competitors, right? Swig, for example, that is one license, one portal, and that's wholly self-contained. If I want to do ZTNA now, right, that VPN replacement, that's a second console, that's a second ecosystem where I have two different panes of glass, two different platforms that I have to manage. If I want to do CASB, that's a third console, that's a third experience, right? So we always talk about single pane of glass, right? Half of it's marketing fluff. But from the perspective of the people who are actually maintaining this from a day-to-day basis, to have a single pane of glass, a single experience, right, where I can deploy any of these technologies, right, and have a similar familiar experience is something that Access does. Okay, Zscaler cannot do that. There's a lot of other licensing, right, and consumption model complexities involved with the Zscalers of the world. And again, they're not the only ones, right? But we've simplified our licensing model, okay? There are other features as well, right? When you talk about server-initiated flows, right? Maybe voice over IP or things like that, right? Where I don't have a user requesting access, but it's the other way, right? Maybe I have a server that's trying to reach out to a client, right? And how can we provide for that? That's something that we can do today, and a lot of our competitors cannot. There's a ton of other competitive info, right? Feature comparisons that we could certainly get into, perhaps in a following session. Of course, you guys can follow up with us and we can talk about competitive positioning. But those are some of the top of mind things that folks often say, oh, wow, this is a single solution. Doesn't matter how or at what rate I want to deploy these technologies, it's going to be a single experience for me. And that's huge, right? And the IT engineers on the call are going to say, yep, that makes sense. So this is my favorite slide, the last slide. Certainly hope that these slides were helpful. We can provide these, Courtney, whomever, again, you guys can reach out to us. We'll get into a bit of the demo. I know we have limited time today. Brian will also be speaking with us on some sales-oriented stuff, some partner-oriented stuff. But I'll pause for a moment. Courtney, are there any questions, any feedback from the group? Hopefully we're running along here.
Yeah, we got 3 questions, Matthew. So the first one, is there any intelligence built into Access, in other words, user experience and application performance?
Yes, there is. So, if a client or user connects, right, and for some reason, right, maybe I have my application set up and I can't access it, right, we can dive into that flow and understand exactly what happened, right? Why did they not access that? Was there a bad login, right? Was there a policy block? So for example, maybe I have a user that tried to get to facebook.com, and we'll demonstrate that in a moment. You can actually see that in real time and see, okay, this is the user, this is the timestamp, this is why, and it was hit on a policy block. So you do have full visibility into what users are doing on the network, right? Whether it's from a, hey, I'm going to the internet perspective, or hey, I'm accessing a cloud application or an on-prem application, full visibility into that, and part of the troubleshooting tool set as well. Yeah, great question.
Perfect, thank you. Another question, do we have any playbook scripts or other tools to ease a transition from an on-prem Blue Coat proxy to Access?
That's a great question. So in general, right, we fully recognize that customers are typically coming, right, from a legacy type of environment. This could be Blue Coat, this could be Palo Alto, Checkpoint, right? There are some other as a service type of solutions that folks are using that maybe aren't up to the challenge. And so not only do we have integrations, API, stuff like that with some other folks, but we do have migration guides available. I would recommend speaking with your account manager and your SE and having a conversation about what you have today, where you're looking to get to, and how that can happen, right? We as a company have run through, if you can imagine, right, all sorts of verticals. We have retail customers, we have customers that are in transportation, medical customers, banking customers, right, all with their own set of requirements. And they want a very painless, seamless way to move and adopt our technologies. And I believe Blue Coat is one of those. Obviously, it's a fairly large player, or at least used to be. So I would recommend reaching out to your local AM or SE If you don't know who that is, you can get in touch with us. We'll point you in the right direction and have that conversation. That's going to be key to ensuring a seamless transition there. So great question.
Perfect, thank you. And for everyone, we'll have your ICAMs reach out after the webinar, and you can have those follow-up discussions as well. And then another question is, how is agentless traffic brokered via tunnels to access this POP? And then how many POPs are there worldwide for access?
Okay, so as far as POPs or POPs, we call them points of presence, and this is a great point, a great talking point. Because of the way the access solution is designed, right? Kind of a containerized Linux machine, if you will, very lightweight, right? We don't have to go out like some of these competitors and build a brand new data center, right? I have to go find a building, power, cooling, right? All my fiber, racks and everything, right? We have the ability, hey, if I've got a customer that's in Australia, right? And maybe they're not in Sydney or Adelaide or whatever it is. Well, if we have presence in a colo, right, we can spin up our solution very quickly. So the last tidbit I saw was 365 POPs. I know it's more than that. I thought 365 was interesting because how many days we have in a year, but it's hundreds of POPs, okay? And this is key, right, to that smart routing that I spoke about, right? The ability to reduce the amount of latency, right, that the user experiences so that I'm not traversing a suboptimal path to get to my application. As far as the brokering goes, right, it depends on whether you're using an agent or not. If it's agentless, right, typically you'll bring up a web browser, you'll browse to a URL, you'll log in with your credentials, and you will be presented, right, with applications or tiles, if you will, right, that will be published to your, not to your desktop, but to your web browser, right? You can click that, and as soon as you log in, that's when the brokering goes on. With the agent, of course, your agent is installed on your device, right? You log in the same way. And typically what that is one of two things. Either A, you're going to pin up an IPsec tunnel to the Atmos cloud. All that web traffic will be tunneled over that secure tunnel, inspected, whatever that policy is, and off you go, right? You could do split tunneling, you could do a number of things with that. Another feature that's pretty cool, right, is that, well, maybe I've got my users, right, all at a campus, and I don't want to install an agent for a secure web gateway, but maybe I have an appliance, right, a firewall, whatever it is. It could be a multi-vendor firewall sitting at the edge, right, my router, whatever it is. Well, we can do the same thing, right? We can pin up those IPsec tunnels from that device and then protect everyone behind it, even though they're not running an agent, right? Because if I'm going to access the internet, I'm going to eventually have to hit the firewall. And then that firewall will know, okay, I'm going to forward all this traffic to the Atmos cloud for inspection. So a lot of different flexibility, right? Agentless, agent-oriented, could sit on a traditional router, right? And we can set up connectivity to Atmos. Again, the point here is to facilitate flexibility for use cases and for our customers' architectures and requirements. Awesome questions. 3 for 3. Love them.
Perfect. And I got another one.
Okay.
Does Access have a preferred recommended SD-WAN solution, or is it agnostic to the underlying transport?
No bias here, but we would recommend Edge Connect, right? So as mentioned, right, prior to the Access acquisition, we, HPE Aruba Networking, acquired Silver Peak about 3-4 years ago. They are the Cadillac of the SD-WAN business, right? You go to Gartner, you go to IDC, any of these industry analysts, and they pitch Silver Peak at the top, right? We have since integrated that product set into the greater Aruba portfolio, right? We call it Edge Connect. It's no longer Silver Peak, but we kept the Edge Connect name. So we would absolutely advocate for the Edge Connect portfolio for any and all of your SD-WAN needs, okay? So I'll make another point, right? Just being very objective here. It's not an all or nothing solution, right? We have the capability to provide a single vendor solution, right? The fact that we have access security and what was Silver Peak, and we have that as both portfolios, right? That true SASE framework that we spoke about. We can provide a true single vendor solution, single consumption, single experience. We fully recognize that folks are not always all in. It's just not the nature of business, right? So you may have a different SD-WAN, right? You may have a Zscaler and want to adopt their SD-WAN. So it can be very piecemeal, right? Where you have a multi-vendor environment. You want to go about it in a phased approach. But Edge Connect is the lead of where you want to go for your SD-WAN, SASE, SSE, access. No bias.
Perfect.
Oh,
Thank you, Matthew.
okay. Yeah, you got it. So I'm sure there's a few more questions, and I want to save time for Brian. Let me just go and share my other screen real quick. Okay, let's see what I can do here. Stop sharing this. Got my management console. It's always fun switching screens in Teams. Okay. Just shout if you can't see my screen. So when I log in, right, this is from the perspective as an administrator, okay? We'll touch very quickly on this stuff, right? So insights, experience, right, DEM and stuff like this. This is where I have the ability as an admin to log in and say, hey, what's been going on, the past 6 hours, right? I can go back, obviously, as far as, a couple of weeks if I want to, right? But I can see here in this case, right, that this is me. I'm running an agent, and I can actually see, right, what I've been browsing to over time. This is the device, right? This is my source IP. This is the timestamp and the actual destinations, right? So you can see here, most of this stuff is successful. But you can see here when I try to go to twitter.com, right, that I was blocked, right? So if a customer, right, this kind of goes back to the question, hey, how do we have troubleshooting and stuff like that? I can't get to Twitter. Why not? Well, we can filter on this, of course, right? I'd say, all right, well, the reason why you can is because you have a matched rule, block social media sites, right? So maybe as an admin, I go back here, right? I say, okay, let me click on rules. I've got a number of rules that I can set up, and you can see I have some here, right? The first rule that I've set up is, well, I have a bunch of countries that I just don't want anyone going to, right? I don't care about the URL or the category, if it's a North Korean site, if it's something in Iran, whatever it may be, right? I'm going to block that. I'm going to create a rule, right? So I created a rule here. Your conditions, this is huge, right? You can match an identity, right? Maybe you just want to talk about, okay, well, instead of the admin, it could be any, it could be me, it could be a contractor, right? Okay, the source, device posture, right? Maybe I can allow traffic or not allow traffic depending upon whether there's an agent running or disabled, or maybe a posture, right? So this is where we get into coupling that user identity with device identity. Maybe all that's great, but I only want them connecting during working hours. Otherwise, they come in on Saturday or try to access on Saturday, they're not going to go anywhere, right? We don't have time to go too much into, setting things up, right? But you can see here, right, my destinations. This is where you're going to add your actual applications, right? This is where you say, hey, I've got users wherever they're sitting, right? I've got some applications that are sitting in my on-prem data center or in the cloud, or maybe even a website, right? And you can add an application however you want. You can see here, right? We even say some of these are supported as agentless, right? And just as an example, right? Maybe you've got a self-hosted web application. Maybe there's some server access, right? I want to provide SSH or remote desktop, right? Maybe it's network access to Active Directory or just an entire network range, right? So you can add these however you want, right? You add the name, right? Okay, ClearPass or my finance database that I spoke about before, right? This is the IP address of it, and I can tag it as well, right? And turn these on and off as needed, right? When I go back to my rule set, right, and I start creating rules here, right? I've actually got a couple rules, right, for contractors. All right, contractor access. All right, anybody who's in the contractor group during working hours, right, can see my SSH, my Google, and Microsoft Teams. Okay, so if I click over here, I'm going to log in as contractor Matt. I'm going to kind of demonstrate the real-time, policy visibility here, right? Let's see, contractor Matt. Of course, the demo gods. Let me see here. Log in as an admin. All right, maybe I just need to refresh this. Here, go back to my link. All right, let's try this again. It just timed out because it's been open for a while. Okay, awesome. Yeah, it was just timed out. So I logged in as a contractor, right? And you can see this is almost kind of like a VDI interface, if you will, right? We have applications or resources that have been published, right? I've logged in, maybe I've got posture enabled, maybe I'm running the agent, maybe I'm not, right? But me being a contractor, right? I'm not given an IP address, right? I have direct access to an application only, right? I can launch Google, boom, Google, right? I can launch SSH server. When I do that, right, I can launch it in a new tab. I can use my own client if I want to, right? However I want to, and go about access that way. Okay. Now here's the cool part, and then I'll hand this over to Brian because I know we're running out of time. Okay. So we see here, right? I've got SSH, I've got Google. Well, if I'm an admin and I say, you know what, all of a sudden, I just want to turn off contractor access, and I hit apply changes, right? I commit this, and I go over here, right? I don't have to click refresh. I don't have to do anything. But usually within a matter of a few seconds, this access, boom, there you go, literally, has disappeared, right? I didn't have to kick out someone. They didn't have to re-log in, right? They didn't have to do any of that. So one last piece, right? Maybe I'm going to facebook.com. I can go to facebook.com. Cool. Well, if I'm running an agent, right? This is my secure web gateway, okay? And I have a rule that says I can't go to, TikTok or Instagram, right? I'm going to be denied. Okay. So I turned that agent on. When I paused it, well, if I try to go to Instagram, it's probably going to allow me. Here you go. So instantaneously, right? Instagram on, off, all that stuff. If I turn this back on, right, I want to turn contractor, and I don't even have to turn the rule on or off. Maybe I just want to edit the rule, right? And I just remove the SSH server, right? I can do that. So I apply changes, I commit it, right? I look over here, and literally within a few seconds, it will be republished. And my user didn't have to do anything. This is real time. Boom, here you go. So we have 10 minutes left. Hopefully Brian can fit his spiel in. Folks, I know we did a lot. We answered some questions. We covered a lot, but I hope this was helpful. This is not the only session that we're going to do. We encourage feedback. We like having these conversations, right? At a technology perspective, of course, we work for HPE Aruba Networking, but we're technologists in general. So anything that you guys want to talk about competitive, hey, what do you think about this? That's what we live for. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing, and I will turn it over to Courtney and Brian. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Matthew. There's a couple questions in the Q&A. Matthew, would you mind answering them? They came in as you were doing the demo.
Sure, I'll take a look.
Thank you. Right,
Perfect.
Brian.
Yeah, great. Hopefully you can hear me well. Happy to join everyone today, and I want to thank Matthew for his picture in Teams. It makes me feel like watching 16 Candles or something. I don't know. Anyway, my name is Brian Janella. I'm the partner account manager for Edge Connect for Silver Peak North America distribution. I'm going to go over a couple quick things today. I have 2 or 3 slides, and then I'm going to give everyone a free gift today, a free NFR. I'm going to show you how to get and register for the NFR, and also just go from there. So real quick, if you have not registered for to become a Silver Peak partner, and Courtney will, and well, all the ICAMs will send you these links and these slides that have a few links in them for getting access to stuff, but they can help you out. It's relatively quick. If you aren't a partner today and you fill out this form, and you will be a partner probably by tomorrow afternoon. So our process is very, very quick. What this will also allow you to do is get onto the partner portal where you can get the NFR. Do that, reach out to your ICSS. We also have another, or ICAM, I should say. We also have another ICSS team that can help get you a hold of stuff. I did want to take one moment just to talk about, we have a ton of sales spiffs. I'm not going to spend much time on this. Like I said, we'll provide these slides or my slides to you if needed. The important part is with this slide to talk about is we have a ton of resources for you to get up to speed. Not only do we have resources, we also have spiffs and sales enablement. My next slide will go into it a little bit more, but depending on where you are in the registration, if you're a gold or platinum, there's back-end rebates now for all Edge Connect and SSE products, as you can see on this. And I'll talk a little bit more about some of these in my next slide and then during the demo. For me, I would say that everyone needs to start getting that sales training, depending on where you are. There's a few $100 of Engage and Grow that you can make. To be more precise about what Matthew said, can we work with other SD-WAN products? The answer is yes. And if that's a new logo and it's a big deal, you do a deal registration, you set an appointment, and we win that deal, that could be over $14,000 that you could be getting in your pocket, or 10,400, I should say, 50, not 14,000. Anyway, so there's lots of money to be made in this business. And so if you have customers that have something else, reach out, go into the Rolodex, into the contacts, and reach out to them. Because what the other thing I will say that we've seen is customers who move over to SSE, if they have an SD-WAN, that deal moves very, very quickly. So there's some incentive there. So let me jump into, and Courtney, tell me if you can't see this Silver Peak Partner Portal link. If you can't, I'm going to continue to move on here. So in the Partner Portal, when you log in, you will get this Partner Portal. This is obviously mine. Real quick, under sales, you go down to NFR. The price lists are there, by the way. The incentives, the deal registration is also here, so you can go in and register that deal I just mentioned. You go in, you can request an NFR. And just so you know, this is live, just like Matthew's demo. So you can choose SD-WAN hardware or software. Obviously, we're talking about SSE. Select your option, demo, and oops, terms and conditions isn't clicking. That might be because I've requested one before. Hold on, there we go. I agree. Slide that down, sorry. There we go, request an NFR. And that's as hard as it gets. So, and to be honest with you, that's about how hard it is to become a partner. So it's fairly simple. We do use a separate process for quoting and sales through distribution, and that's why we're still on a separate portal. That is being integrated, so that will change probably this calendar year. But other than that, I'll turn it back over to Courtney if there's any questions, or for me, I can answer them if you want to type them in. I don't think there is any. I'll stop sharing. Courtney, could you?
Perfect. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it. And like I said, we'll send out an email recapping all of this information, and we'll include Matthew's slides as well as the information to sign up on the Silver Peak Partner Portal.